Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So I don't know how many of you guys will actually recognize this watercolor sketchbook. So this is my sketchbook, I believe, from 2018. I usually write the date inside here, so 2017 to 2018, and this is like the beginning of when I was doing more watercolor work. I think I started doing watercolor in 2016, so I had about a year before I started working into this sketchbook. What is with this angle? Okay, that's better. So yeah, I wanted to actually re-look at this sketchbook because I just cleaning a bit of stuff, and I was like, wait, I actually really enjoyed the sketchbook when I was working in it. So you can see the various styles that I did. I did a lot more like chibi work, and it was mostly done with like fine liners, and then I would watercolor them in. But I've done some like more stylized portraiture in here. Let me see if I can show you guys. Some different kind of stuff in here that I feel like a lot of you guys don't know that I used to do more kind of like towards realism, semi-realism back when I was in university, because I did a lot more portraiture, a lot more figure work back then. But I did a lot of these like little tiny chibis of 17. And that's kind of how I got my account started, like back in like on Instagram and stuff. But I thought it'd be fun to kind of look back at a few of these drawings. See, some of these are really cute though. Minimal color palette, kind of like greens and browns. I think look really cute. There's a lot of like unfinished pages in here. And there's some of these kinds of stuff, more stylized. Portrait, June. Yeah, I do have a sketchbook tour of this, so if you guys want to look at that and see what this whole thing is about, you can go ahead and do so. But I thought it'd be fun to redraw something from this sketchbook. I haven't done like a redraw challenge in a while, and I thought it'd be fun to do something. We could do, oh look, a tiny Hinata back from 2018, and a lot of Preston stuff, how much I miss them. But there's a lot of stuff that I drew in here, and a lot of them were done quite like clean and neat, but I kind of want to redraw this one. I think it'd be fun to play around with the colors a little bit more with my knowledge of watercolor now, so let's see what we can do. So this is based off of June from their music video Highlight, but I'm not sure why I used like kind of like this fire aesthetic in the back. I really do like the lighting on it. I think that's really nice, and I do like the clothing folds for the most part. I think it has nice contrast, but I think in the music video it's like neon lights, so we'll see how I can translate that as a redraw for this. I'm gonna quickly go sketch that out. I'll film a little bit of the sketching process, but because I like to prop my book all the way up, it's hard for me to film without the camera in front of the paper, so we'll see how that goes, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I managed to film pretty much all of the sketching process at this weird angle. So today I'm using the Pilot Color Eno to do my rough sketch before I go back in and basically erase this rough sketch and then go back with a normal mechanical pencil to do my cleaner and more finished lines, so I know where I am going to be painting everything. So as you can see, I'm just sketching out the head. I'm pretty much like sticking with the similar pose that I did for the original one, because this is supposed to be like a redraw, repaint version of this. And I hope you guys enjoy the little real-time sounds for this. Because of the texture of the paper, I thought it'd be okay to leave in the sounds for this. I'm putting on the little artist glove just to make sure I keep moisture, any like sweat, oils and stuff from my hand off the paper, just because if I know I'm going to be painting this and I don't want to have these weird little splotches on my page, I need to make sure to keep it as clean as possible. And yeah, there's not too much to talk about. I'm probably going to do a more in-depth talk or voiceover about my opinion about this a little bit later, just because I'm just going to be narrating a little bit of the sketching process, and then I have some real-time talking that will come on in between every little clip or so. And then I muted the rest of the clips just because the sound was not coming from my actual microphone. Funny or not, it was actually coming from my webcam, so the volume was the mic quality was very bad, so I guess it was okay for me to worry about the mic not picking up stuff. So yeah, but I'll just leave you guys with the sound for now. Okay, I don't know if I have the mic on, but if I do during this part, I'll hopefully put it in. I think I have to go with the fire route. I don't think I'm gonna be able to replicate the same look of the neon lights kind of like flashing in the back where they're kind of like really thin strips. I think if I did it, now that I'm thinking about it, like I do have access to gouache, but do I want to stick strictly with watercolor and only use gouache for the highlights? We'll see, we'll see. I'm already liking this so far, so hopefully I won't butcher it too much. I haven't worked in the sketchbook in a while on this paper, so we'll see how well this works. It's definitely a different paper compared to this one. So yeah, I'm gonna lightly erase this, clean it up with normal mechanical pencil, then we'll move straight into painting. And I have no plan of how I want to do this, besides that I guess we want to have this kind of like fiery yellow in the back with these little, what are these? I have no idea what these are, like little splatter things. So let's see how I'm gonna do this. I had an idea of how I used to do it, so we'll go about this somehow. I'm sorry about the lighting. I'm hoping the mic is working so I can apologize in real time. Okay, so I'm using just the normal mechanical pencil. I didn't explain this. I don't know if I'm going to explain this in the voiceover or how I'm going to edit this, but I'm wearing a artist glove, like a drawing glove, just because when I was tackling the pose, I immediately got nervous, which makes my hands clammy, which I don't want to be transferring oil and sweat to the paper. Or it'll be harder for me to make sure the watercolor adheres properly without making like weird little splotches of not wanting to go onto the paper because of the oils. So that's just the heads up. Alternative, if you don't have an artist glove, you can just put a piece of paper under your hand and just move it along with your hand so you can keep your paper as clean as possible. So I think, let's see if I keep this in. I don't know if I knew how to stylize the 17 members at the time, so I didn't even put Junie's moles when drawing him. Okay, so now that I'm done the cleaner sketch with the pencil, I'm going to be moving on to the actual painting portion of this video, and this is where I'm going to be talking more about process as well as my thoughts and opinions about this process, I guess, or even like the finished product versus like the original version. So yeah, I'm just rearranging all of my stuff before I start painting. So I'm using my usual palette that I am used to working with. If you guys are interested in that watercolor palette, I do have a link in my description to my frequently used supplies, and I believe in that description it has the timestamp to where I list every pigment, or not pigment, every paint tube that I have in my palette, so you guys know the exact paints that I have in the palette, that like how I rearranged them and everything. So I started off with his skin tone, as I usually do, and then I bleed it into kind of this yellow color, and I kind of put this all across his shoulders. And then because the paint is still a little bit wet, I decided to bleed in a little bit of that kind of navy blue color. So one of the gripes I had about working on this one compared to my original, so I don't know if it's because of my taste has changed or it's because of what I had available at the time. I used a lot of, oh, I forgot about this. So like my dad brought Timbits because he went to Timmy's, so I went to have a little break while I let the whole thing dry. But yeah, so continuing about this, I used to use a lot more like vibrant, clean colors when working on watercolor painting. I don't know if it's because I did more of a cel shaded kind of style, so I'd love everything to be a little bit more bold, a little bit more punchy. When I was working on this one, my colors were a lot darker, a little bit deeper, but also a little bit more muted. And I think it's just like my taste in colors has changed a little bit. I still like vibrancy and stuff, especially for like digital art, but when I'm painting, I love to mix colors with one another and I kind of like meld them together, and it gets more of these kind of like grayish blue or brown tones. Even for like the skin here, I'm mixing in some of the purple and then a little bit of the blue that I've been using into his shadow under his neck and on his chest, just because these are going to be in shadow anyways. And initially I actually talked about this during while I was painting it, but because the mic didn't pick it up, I have to re-say it. But I thought that I might have applied the color under his neck a little bit too dark, but you'll see after I add in the shadows and I start to render the clothes just a little bit, like adding a little bit more detail, pushing the contrast a little bit more, you can see that the shadow under his neck is actually not dark enough at all. So always go back and forth if you can, or like establish a lot of your colors beforehand so you can get a good idea of which your darkest areas versus your lightest areas. So yeah, but that's like something I really like about using watercolor, is that it's the same way how I use graphite. So like I love graphite because you can work from light to dark really quickly, and it's the easiest for my brain to process how to like approach a drawing or a painting. So when I do watercolors, it's kind of like the same approach for me. I would layer up all my light colors and then slowly layer up to my shadows and my dark colors and try to preserve any white areas if I need to. So as you can see, I know that for June's hair, I wanted to have the same kind of like yellowy light, kind of like a rim lighting or a highlight around his hair. So I decided to do that first, let it dry for the most part, and then I'm adding in the blue, which is like kind of more or less the base of his hair. And because there's not like a, or at least I didn't want there to be a heavy band for a highlight across his hair, I decided to fill in basically all of his hair with this blue color. And I kind of decided that on the spot, because you can probably see like how I was laying down the blue initially. I was probably going to do like a band of blue on the top and a band of blue on the bottom and kind of make them meet in the center and have that as the highlight. But I decided not to, and I decided to add just more deeper blues into the hair. And while that is drying, I am moving down to his shirt. So a really big difference between the colors that I chose is that the original one is more of like ultramarine-ish or like purple-ish. That's very vibrant and punchy. Now, I remember what watercolor set I used back then. It's this really tiny, I think it's the travel set, but it's the Koi watercolor set. So it's like the really tiny one, like it's like the size of my, maybe like my fist or something when it's folded up. It's really tiny, but that's because I wasn't too sure if I was gonna like using watercolor, so I bought like the tiniest little set possible that was available on Amazon, so I wasn't investing too much. But I started to like using watercolor so much that I decided to invest in more higher quality paints as well as a larger palette, because Holbein, at least to my knowledge, a lot of their colors are actually light fast. There's a few colors that are not, or are kind of like in the mid-range of being light fast and kind of like, you know, like it's okay, like it's archival. But for my Koi travel set, I believe none of them were light fast, which means that if they're exposed to the sun for a very long time, eventually the pigment will fade off the paper and everything will get lighter and not as saturated. So it's definitely not good for if you're doing client work that maybe that client will be hanging it in their house. That's not a good idea because it'll be exposed to sunlight. But because I remember what palette I was using, I remember looking at my palette like a few years back and I really dug out ultramarine and burnt umber because I was so used to using those two colors along with like sometimes some whatever red I had available or whatever green I was using. I would mix them together and try to mix blacks because I was always taught to never use black because it kind of like sucks out the color. Now obviously you can use it if you're going for a certain look or you're aware of the pigments that make up that kind of black. I remember like, I think is it some blacks have more of a yellowy undertone, I think, or it's like a green undertone. So like if you know how to use it well, then you can, but we were always encouraged to mix our own blacks when I'm working with like oils and acrylics. So I was more used to doing that, and it worked well for working with watercolor because it was easy to neutralize colors. But because I was so used to using ultramarine so often, I used it so much for like a lot of my blue pieces, which included that one of June. Now compared to this one's more of a like a greenish blue color. Like there's more yellow in it than red, so it leans towards green rather than towards purple. So that's kind of like one major difference between this one. I didn't really intensify the kind of like light blue teal aspect either. So I think in terms of color, the original one that I had done in 2017 was more of a like good gradation, a vibrancy of different hues. But for this one, I think it's a little bit more cohesive. There's just less going on. I think the other one's visually more prettier, but like I guess technical skill wise, obviously I hopefully improved. And you can see that I'm darkening up the shadows underneath his chin, because after I've done like the deepest shadows in his clothing, I can see what is the darkest thing on this piece. So that would be his top of his hair, and then the little folds that meet up where his arm is kind of like clenching or like pushing against his chest abdomen area. So yeah, I'm carefully just lining the eyes for a little bit, because this is something like I've noticed I've been botching up eyes quite a bit. So that's kind of like another reason why I haven't painted in a while. I feel like I botched up eyes quite a bit in terms of like making the character look derpy. Oh, right. So I did intensify the little flame looking things in the back. Obviously I didn't follow the same shape, and when I was doing the initial talking and painting portion, which I had to sadly mute, on the right side, the blue flame looking things, I was calling it toxic waste because I made the colors really dark and muddy, and that was not the same vibe that the original had. It was very much like airy and loose, and it had a very beautiful kind of like cyanish, it's not cyan, I don't really remember what color it is. It's some kind of like blue that leans towards like green a bit. It's not like quite turquoise. But here I switch brushes. I'm using my Artist Loft Necessities script brush in the size 8, and it has a synthetic really long kind of hair tip that kind of keeps its form, so it's easier for me to use it for line work. So I decided to switch to that just to guarantee a little bit with more control. As much as I said that I wanted to become looser with watercolor, I'm very much like, I feel like I'm a little bit of a control freak in terms of line quality. So line work is something like I feel like I detest, but it's something I feel like I still need. Like in a piece, you could probably see in my digital art and my watercolor art, is that even though I don't technically do line art before I do coloring, I will still somehow end up with some kind of line work or line art at the very end. And I think I need it for like clarity. So I'm just carefully lining his face, his eyes, his hair, just keeping the details a little bit thinner, a little bit cleaner, hopefully. And hopefully this one will make me paint more often. I feel like two things kind of like threw me off in terms of not wanting to paint as often. One is I keep butchering the eyes. I don't know why I made the shoulder so thick looking. I think it's because where I placed the little seam on his shoulder makes his shoulder look really like thick. Not like wide, but like thick. Like his shoulder from his chest to his back seems like it's like 3 fists wide or something. But yeah, so one thing's like butchering the eyes, and then the other thing is line quality. So I used to do everything with the Raphael Kolinsky brush for quite a while, and I keep saying this in videos where I did watercolors that I need to replace my brushes soon, and the Raphael Kolinsky is kind of one of them. I keep beating up this brush basically with the amount of like washes, scrubbing, and like everything with using that brush, because I use it pretty much for everything, is that the point, it's harder for me to get like a perfect point at the end, which is why I decided to switch back to my second favorite brush, which is the Artist Loft Necessities script brush in the size 8. Because I used to use that one for everything, but that one was very like, it was good for detailed work and my smaller work. I believe that one I used a lot more even with the chibis that I did in the not the sketchbook, the 2018 sketchbook or something like that, like my previous sketchbook that's similar to this one. I would use that one the most, I think, because I used to work a lot smaller. But now that I've been working a lot larger, the Raphael Kolinsky holds up so much pigment and water that's just easy for me to use it. But also, like, it used to have such a sharp tip so that I could do my line work with the same brush. But because I keep beating it up, it no longer holds its point as easily. I bet, like, if I had more patience, it would be able to hold up a lot better. So I mentioned in the video as well, or at least like when I was doing it in real time, that I wanted to add a dark background just to make sure that these little flame looking things stand out a lot more. And I just moved my binder clip because I didn't want to have that awkward little white space, so I'm just kind of scrubbing at the page and filling it in, so at least it looks somewhat consistent. I also extended June's arm just a little bit so that it wasn't awkwardly cut off before everything else. And this is the before shot, before I decide to fix it a little bit. I somehow misplaced some of the gouache footage. I'll be able to find it probably for the speed paint version. I forgot to mention that at the beginning of the video, so I'll make sure to put a disclaimer at the beginning, so if anyone's wanting to watch a, like, I think it's an 8-minute version or 7-minute version, I will have that there, just because I know some people don't want to watch half an hour of me rambling and painting. So one major difference, like I said, was the vibrancy, and I kind of didn't like how dull mine looked compared to this one. I actually really like the vibrancy of the one on the left. So as you can see, I'm going back in, and I didn't end the video. I'm going back in, I'm taking this blue color, which is still quite green compared to the original, and I am glazing over everything I've already done, just to basically tint everything or shift the hue. So glazing is basically taking a light wash of any color and kind of going over your whole piece without like shifting or lifting up any of the pigment. So as long as you're not scrubbing at the page, you can probably glaze pretty easily, but obviously it will depend on the paint quality or your paper. So because I know how this paper and this paint works quite well, I knew I was going to be able to glaze quite easily. So you can see that I'm kind of shifting a lot of the colors towards this more vibrant blue, and I think that kind of helps add a little bit more saturation to the piece, which I think it was lacking before, even though I think June's outfit in the music video is black. So maybe I could have left it as monotone, but like next to the original, I definitely think it was lacking saturation. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me paint a little bit today. I feel like I haven't done painting too much other than on my sketchbook doodles video, so hopefully I'll bring back some of my my painting videos or painting series back to my regular videos, because I know some of you guys enjoy watching me paint, and I know some people are only here for my digital, so who knows. I'll try my best to juggle both again. So yeah, thank you very much guys for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!